Hello, my name is Scuria-Herman, and today I'll be speaking on the topic of the right to protest. Now, fundamentally, this has a basis in politics, so this obviously isn't going to be the most, amicable video to my entire audience. While my audience is small, of course, I believe that I have a wide range of viewers, ranging from natives to El Salvador, all the way to underrepresented communities in the comment section of my diversity video. The reason for that is I think I haven't quite found my niche, but I don't really think I would want to if it means limiting who sees my videos. But anyway, my point is with this political thing is this has a basis in politics because it's law and rights. But it shouldn't be political in the sense that political is characterized as a word today, because this should not be a controversial subject, as it is written into law. However, since it does have a basis in politics and some people are not comfortable with that, I wanted to give a warning beforehand, before I really got into it. The way I wanted to start off this video, one of my favorite games of all time, it's called Do I Have It Right? It's from iCivics. I think I'm going to do a different format for this video. I might just do gameplay of that, because I haven't done that sort of thing, and I know that it's popular. And I don't know, the game isn't popular, but narration over gameplay is more popular than just seeing what's in front of you and having someone speak to you. So I might try that for this, because I am talking about that at large. But when I played it, it's a game that's pretty much unavailable today. How will I play it? Well, there is a version of it. It's not the version that I played. It's a very different game. They've made a lot of updates, like they've added a lot of impairments to the game, like your character can wear glasses or like have a wheelchair or stuff like that. There's a lot more customizability. But they also took out the mode that goes beyond prestige and stuff like that. You have to end after the final day. You can't go on past that, which is disappointing to me, because that was my favorite part of the game, is to continue on and run the firm. But anyway, let me explain what the game is actually about. This game is about the Constitution and opening up your own law firm and finding the lawyers to represent each different amendment for all the cases, all the people that come in asking for help with their cases. It taught me a lot about the Constitution, and I owe it to a lot of my knowledge of politics. I owe my knowledge of politics, rather, and law to that game, mostly. When you go into the game, you have to pick a partner for your law firm, because you just got out. I think the lore in the original game was like you just passed the bar and you can't charge anyone yet, because you have to build reputation. That's why it's a prestige system for the first few set of days. I think it's the first week. And you have to build prestige and have higher prestige than Dewey, Cheatham and Howe, the competing law firm. You have to pick a partner. The two partners are Chuck Freepress and Sally Forth. Nothing against Sally Forth. I've got no problems with her as a person, as an individual. I've partnered with her on some playthroughs of that game. But Chuck is always my best pal. I like his backstory. His name is Chuck Freepress, so he fights for the Free Press. A lot of the names are like that. Sally Forth, it's Fourth Amendment. The amendments that he represents are interesting to me. You're running a law firm. You are the head of the law firm. You gotta coordinate everything. You gotta put ads in the paper. You gotta do all this stuff. The lawyers actually do the cases, but you gotta match the client to the lawyer. So Chuck Freepress, the only one he knows when he starts is freedom of expression. He's free press. He knows freedom of expression, which is half of the First Amendment in the game. It's freedom of expression and freedom of religion. When he does his own research, and sometimes he's able to learn about freedom of religion. But freedom of expression is what I always start with pretty much in the game. There's a bunch of amendments, I think the main ones are 1, 5, and 6 that are split up into 2. And then there's some that are just left out. Like, it would be difficult, for example, to have a system in the game that defends the amendment for probation, and then prohibition, sorry. The amendment for prohibition, and then also defend the amendment that outlaws prohibition or repeals prohibition. So obviously it's not every single amendment that's represented, but it's a lot of them, and some of them are split into two, like I said. The way that that game operationalized these amendments has stuck with me, and that's how I view a lot of laws in our current system of government, is through the lens of that game. Except for the Second Amendment. I didn't agree with how the game worked the Second Amendment. There's a few characters in the game who show up asking about the Second Amendment, and initially I chose you do not have a right, but that would ruin my score, so I would just tell them, hey, come back tomorrow. And I would just perpetually do that. And in the version of the game that exists now, that means you could just put them off forever, and then the game ends before you tackle their case, and you never ruin your record. My interpretation, my read of the Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. In order to operate a well-regulated militia, to me, that reads is not on an individual basis. I do not believe an individual should have the right to bear arms. I believe a militia should. The argument people bring up is the Boston Minutemen. That's the militia. It's not just one guy with a gun under his bed who just shoots at anybody he wants. It's a well-regulated militia. That's the point. If everybody's running around shooting guns, that's not going to provide safety. That's not something that should be promoted. This video is not about the Second Amendment. It's kind of about the First. So I never hire a lawyer who can defend the Second Amendment. That was a big thing in the game. That's why I brought that up. But freedom of expression. You have the right to free speech. You have the right to free press. You have the right to protest. These are fundamental rights. These are the first right in the Constitution, the first right granted from the Constitution is the freedom to express oneself. And that right is, in truth, a boon for America, because not many other places, at least not until America did it, had that sort of system in place with specific rights granting free speech. I find that incredible. I find that one of the great parts of America is the ability to speak freely, as I am doing now, technically. The issue is when speech is limited. At the college I attend not too long ago, I'm going to get to this later, but I just got an email that said it was November 12th. So November 12th, a protest was held on campus. This protest was for the Free Palestine movement. The subject of this video has no basis in your opinions on that movement. If it's negative, that doesn't change anything. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to take a stance on there because I know that's divisive. And I don't want to alienate anybody. But I believe that you should believe that regardless of whether or not you agree with the cause, you should believe in that cause's right to speak for itself, to spread its message, unless it's specifically hateful or aggravated towards a specific group, which this movement is not, at least in the way it appeared. What was happening? Well, it was, I'm going to get to the specifics later, but essentially people from, I believe it was from Israel, came to campus to speak about something, and a small crowd gathered outside the ARC where that meeting was held and started protesting, and there was like a drum beat, there was stuff like that. My class at the time was near that place. We couldn't even see them. Because we heard them, we heard the drums. and we were looking around out the window. We couldn't see where they were. Eventually, according to the professor, the noise got to be too much, so we decided to move classrooms. I didn't really find it to be too distracting. That's not really I'm not trying to make a dig at my professor. It's just, I didn't really think it was that big of a deal. But we moved across the entire campus to get away from these protesters. We exited the building, and I was looking for these protesters. I wanted to see what's going on. Is this a huge thing? It sounded, pretty big and loud and all that stuff. As soon as I came out, there were several security guards around the building. I went over, I walked away from the group, and I finally found the protest. It was a handful of people with a couple of drum sets with a Palestinian flag. There were more security guards there than there were protesters. I feel like that is very indicative of the whole pushback here. It's also an open campus. Anybody's allowed to go on it. There's no laws being broken. It's being broken, rather. It's people expressing themselves and expressing what they believe in, which under their constitutional rights, they are allowed to do. There weren't that many people there. That's not me trying to mock or belittle the movement. I'm just saying there weren't that many people there. There were more security guards. Let me repeat this. There are more security guards there than there were people. I am Jewish. I make no secret of this. I did not feel targeted when I walked up to the protest. I didn't join in, but I observed. And it was just people drumming, waving a flag, and shouting for human rights. I think with those statements, I think you have to be a certain type of person to really disagree with those messages. So I had the rest of my class. I left, and that was that. The next day, I had to go to class as well, because that's how classes work. When I went on campus, all the gates were closed. It was shuttered. There were double the normal amount of guards. And there was a guard standing outside the gate, and he was checking everybody's IDs and seeing, okay, you go to school here, you can go here. They locked down the campus. And I asked them outright, I asked the guard, why did you do this? What's going on? He's like, oh, well, the protest yesterday. Okay. I was at the protest. It was not that rowdy. There was no property damage. There was no hate instilled in anybody. It was just people speaking their mind. Just like, okay, all right, I guess that's a bit, of a reaction, but, I went about my day. Later on, I'd say I eavesdropped. It's technically eavesdropping, but I participated in the conversation. I announced myself as hearing them and listening in. It was no secret that I was eavesdropping, so I don't feel bad about sharing this. They weren't trying to be secretive either, but someone in my class went up to the professor and asked about the whole lockdown. And I mentioned that it was because of the protests, and the person said, yeah, well, I was there. I'm just wondering why that's an issue, why this school is going in this direction. This might seem minor, why I'm harping on this. My classmate said this. My classmate was at the protest, and they're checking IDs to see who goes to school here and let those people in. The campus students were the ones protesting. The people who are allowed on campus were the ones doing the protest. This lockdown, this guarding the campus, was quite literally just a show of force to try and instill a fear of expressing oneself. It was not protecting the campus. The campus residents were the ones performing these acts. They were the ones supporting this cause. The idea that it's some outside force that's mingling in campus operations and it's pulling the strings is conspiracy. Let me show you how Pratt, the school, responded to this. Because this is very important. Because they use some very specific language that is very important to note. Again, addressing incidents at the November 12th demonstration on campus. In recent days, we have heard from a number of you regarding the November 12th, 2025 demonstration that took place on the Brooklyn campus during the conference of the Association of Independent Colleges of Art and Design, ACAD, hosted by Pratt. We write today to reaffirm our shared values, to acknowledge the impact of the demonstration, and to update you on the steps the Institute is taking in response. Freedom of expression, including speech, is central to Pratt's mission and fundamental to building an open and inclusive community, including on issues that are difficult, emotional, or contentious. When individuals are free to share ideas, perspectives, and experiences, we enrich collective knowledge, understanding, and mutual respect, and foster a culture of open dialogue and civility, where diverse intellectual, political, cultural, and social perspectives are freely expressed and constructively challenged. The same principles support invited speakers' right to present their talk and demonstrators' right to voice their objections. There was no storming of this meeting. It was not crashed. It was outside the meeting and people were protesting. Just like when Andrew Cuomo was delivering an address and someone shows up to that address and starts protesting the fact that he is, a criminal and he's just allowed to walk free. That's in their right to express. There's no disturbance here. You're talking about diverse intellectual, political, cultural, and social perspectives are freely expressed and constructively challenged. They are expressing these political, societal, cultural, they're expressing those perspectives, and you're angry at them because they did that. Because their perspectives challenge yours, not in spite of it. At the same time, with this freedom of expression comes a shared responsibility to engage one another with care, to consider the broader context of our words and actions, and to ensure that our expression does not infringe on the equal rights, dignity, or safety of others. I want to specify this. The entire whole thing with this, they're acting as though this resulted in people getting hurt, people getting terrorized, people getting intimidated. There were, again, more security guards there than there were people. And they were all across campus. They were standing and watching them, waiting for them to do something wrong. If something went wrong, I assure you, the security guards either would have handled it or one of the protesters would have been seriously hurt as a result of it. I do not think anyone was in danger. I think that people were just expressing their views, and the fact that they were expressing their views about how people shouldn't be hurt, and you are taking that as an act of violence, is interesting. Last week's demonstration on campus included actions that incited violence, disrupted institute activities, and affected the safety of community members and guests. You've heard my story. That's not everybody's story. Maybe there was someone that was terrorized by these people. There was no inciting violence. I heard the protesters for an hour. I don't know how long it went on, but I heard them for an hour. There was no inciting violence. That was just not something that happened. My safety as a community member was not threatened. And I walked up to the protesters. I walked up past the security guards and up to the protesters. My safety was not threatened. That doesn't mean nobody's safety was threatened. I don't know that. But I'm saying, eyewitness perspective, my safety was not threatened, which is important to note. Disrupted institute activities. Disruption is protest. Protest is disruption. I don't think that you should really be angry at a disruption when that's the point of protest. When your entire point of doing this, your entire reason to speak these words is to disrupt the status quo and bring people's attention to the issues that you're bringing up. That goes for any protest, regardless of the cause. Disruption. You're mad at a disruption? Institute activities were not disrupted. My class was moved from one side of the campus to the other, and I think even that was unnecessary. The class still went on, nothing changed. This is trying to silence speech, and that's a scary direction to move in. At Pratt, we support the right to express oneself freely. However, free expression must align with Pratt's community standards and guidance for public gatherings, which clearly outline our shared expectations. Expression that crosses into targeted harassment, discrimination, or conduct that threatens or harms another person is not tolerated at Pratt. By now, everything I've said, you should read that sentence and you should see the incredulity of that. If these people are truly targeting a specific group, I belong to that group. I walked up to them. I was not targeted. That doesn't mean nobody could have been targeted, but I'm just saying this really doesn't add up to my experience. The Institute is actively investigating the incidents. Each incident will be reviewed through a fair and thorough process. Where policy violations are substantiated, appropriate disciplinary action will follow. Ensuring safety, equity, and due process for everyone involved remains our highest priority. I don't think it does. I'm gonna speak honestly here. I don't think it does. I think that the motives behind this email, behind these actions, behind locking down the campus, I think the motives behind that are not to promote safety, because the people that you are protecting are the people doing these demonstrations. You are not trying. But also, if it wasn't the people doing these demonstrations, you wouldn't send these email. If the campus body was not the one doing these demonstrations, you wouldn't send this email to the campus body. That's the point. This is intimidation. This is trying to promote hiding one's opinions and not expressing, which goes against your First Amendment rights. The Founding Fathers thought to put this amendment first, when the Second Amendment was what allowed them to rise up against the British. The Third Amendment was part of how the British occupied their homes. The Fourth Amendment was protecting their own privacy and civil liberty. We go down this list. Why is the First Amendment first? The freedom of expression, the freedom of protest is so core to what it means to be, I would not even say what it means to be American. I would say what it means to be human. That it is so necessary that it's put first. If you are not allowed to respect yourself, then your very humanity is restrained. I don't care what you think of the cause. I don't care what you think of politics. I think that people should be allowed to express their ideals, so long as, this email is trying to say, so long as it's not targeting a specific group and being hateful and attacking them. That's not what was happening at this protest. That's why I'm saying this. If this protest was doing that, I would not be making this video. Or I would, but I wouldn't be mentioning this. This isn't the first time a campus-wide protest like this has happened. I saw a bigger one. That was on the main lawn instead of just a side building. That was on the main lawn, filled with people, and they were chanting very hateful phrases towards people who share my identity. I felt targeted, I felt scared, I felt intimidated. That's not a type of protest I would support. This protest was not that, and it's important to recognize the difference between the two, because one is protected under your constitutional rights, the other is hate speech. This is not hate speech. This is free speech, and what they are doing is trying to silence free speech. And then it goes on, and that's the copy and paste. Mumbo jumbo. Right now, in the trajectory that American politics are headed down, your constitutional rights are going to be threatened. The Fourth Amendment for many people has already been violated. I expect the Third Amendment to be violated very soon, especially due to the shortage of places to put soldiers in American cities that's going on right now. I think not house soldiers is going to come up. And the First Amendment is being slowly picked away at. This action, this silencing of speech, I do not believe it would have taken place years ago. Genuinely. I do not believe that in a political climate from years ago, I do not believe that something like this would have taken place. But it is the culmination of government action and cultural consciousness moving away from something like the First Amendment that is causing it to be stripped away. And I believe that that is a fundamental mistake. It is your right. It is not a restriction placed on you. It is a boon, it is a grant to you. And to have that removed from you is a violation in my mind. You have rights, and you should know your rights. Do you have a right? You could play that game and find out. I think that that game is a very good game. And I think that each and every day, it's more important to know what rights you have, especially when there's people who tell you what rights you have, and they're not always correct. And simply the belief that you have less rights than you do can afford you less rights. So make use of all the ones that you can. This takes me back, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, El Salvador, the CECOT. It's interesting that I made that video before anything with the CECOT is going on. You know, well, obviously things with the CECOT going on, but now people who don't belong in the CECOT are being sent to the CECOT. My stance in the CECOT video, the original one that, you know, got blown up and all the El Salvadorans invaded the comment section, but my stance in that video was, yes, these people are horrible individuals. The people that are held in the CECOT currently, or at the time, are horrible individuals. They are murderers, they are drug dealers, they're all these things. They're terrorists. They are gangsters and terrorists and horrible people, and they deserve to be locked up. I believe that they deserve a chance of redemption. I believe they deserve a chance of rehabilitation, especially because what if someone who is falsely accused is sent there? What then? What if you don't like this cause? What if you don't like protests? So you want the freedom of expression to be lessened? What happens when a cause you care about or a thought you want to share that can't be because you took away your own rights? I think that this is a very important time in history, and I think it's a very important time to know your rights. And it's an important time to recognize that you have the right to protest, despite what people may tell you. Thank you. That's all I have to say on the subject. I know it started off a lot more joyful than it ended, but it's a serious topic. I'm not generally a serious person, so that's going to be all from me. So until next time, adieu.